Okay, rockers, I'm HoJo, and before we get into this week's episode, Hunnsy and I wanted to let you know that if you enjoy HoJo and Hunnsy's Hard Rock House, then we'd like you to tell us what you think of our podcast.
I'm Hunnsy, and that's right, HoJo. We want to know what our single-digit listeners enjoy about what we're doing and what we could actually do to make it better.
Nothing, surely.
Pop band war stories. Do you want to hear from HoJo's glory days back in the 80s as one of the main writers on Metal Bible, Kerrang?
I could tell you about the time I got arrested at a Vardis gig, or when Bruce Dickinson and I picked up these girls behind the Iron Curtain in Poland, or when I went to a party at Pete Way's house in London and he ordered up...
All right. We get the picture. We also want you to give us any rock-related subject matter that you'd like on a weekly pod.
So if you reckon the world of spandex needs a thorough investigation...
or you need to know which rock and roll lyrics are the dumbest ever, then let us know and we'll talk your ears off and most likely make you laugh a lot.
You can get hold of me and Hunnsy via our Instagram,
which is HoJo_and_Hunnsy. I couldn't find an easier one.
Let's hope Twitter's easier, which is...
just HoJo and Hunnsy.
That's better. Or Facebook.
HoJo and Hunnsy's Hard Rock House. Or, if you're strictly old school like us, you can even email us at hojoandhunnsy@gmail.com.
That's HoJoandHunnsy@gmail.com. So, let us know what it is you want from HoJo and Hunnsy's Hard Rock House, then sit back, assume the position, and we'll do the rest.
And without further ado, let's get into this week's episode. What time is it, HoJo?
It's time to rock! Hello. I'm HoJo.
I'm Hunnsy.
And welcome to this, the 5th edition of HoJo and Hunnsy's Hard Rock House, the safe space for old rock gumbies, just like us, where we've just put on our loincloths and covered ourselves in baby oil, the better to discuss one of the most polarising metal bands of all time on today's podcast. But more of that later. Before we get into the link between metal and homoeroticism, we're going to kick off with our usual delve into the music that's been spinning on our turntables. Well, computers, isn't it really these days? So, Hunnsy, what's the music that's been cleaning the wax out of your ears today?
Well, funny enough, I did have my ears waxed earlier this week. I think it's called microsuction because my wife kept telling me that I should get my ears tested because I wasn't hearing what she was saying. So I literally did go and get my ears suctioned earlier this week. So I've been listening to Michael Schenker Group's Assault Attack album, which obviously featured the vocal prowess of none other than Graham Bonnet. I'd seen them with Gary Barden and I was a big fan. And then all of a sudden, Barden was out and Bonnet was in. And obviously they recorded Assault Attack. And there was a lot of trepidation and fear and all that sort of stuff. But actually, I think it's a brilliant rock record, which is only enhanced by Bonnet. I'm a big fan of Bonnet. I know a lot of people weren't because of the way he looked. He didn't look very metal or very rock, did he? But there was no doubting his vocals on it. And I think that album stands up as one of MSG's best records. Obviously, I never got to see them because he never actually played live with them. Or he did once, didn't he, before the infamous Reading Festival headline. And he decided to do something that got him fired.
Yeah, do you remember what it was?
I believe they were playing a warm-up show for their headline slot at the Reading Festival in 82, I think it was. And he decided to go on stage drunk and he got his penis out. Is that right?
He did. He's actually owned it. I think he's come out and done numerous interviews about that whole sorry escapade and has gone, yeah, I was a bit of a dick. And,
yeah.
and he kind of blamed the alcohol and has taken full responsibility.
I don't know anybody who was at that show. Do you know anybody who was at that show?
No, nobody.
It'd be good to maybe, if any of our 9 listeners were at that infamous show prior to the festival headline slot, it would be good to get them on and they can maybe give us a real-time account of what actually happened that night.
Yeah, that would be good, wouldn't it? If we could get an eyewitness story on the... What's it called? Is it called Dick Gate? Is it called Cock Gate? What's it called?
I don't know. Bonnet Gate? I don't know. Whatever it was called. But
well, that's not funny. That's not funny at all, Bonnet Gate.
I felt a bit sorry for Bonnet because I would have loved to have seen them tour that record. It would have been a good band going forward. But ultimately, if you get your cock out on stage, you're going to get fired, aren't you?
You are indeed. Did you hear, incidentally, just right in the middle of your conversation there was a little thing that went ping. It was obviously like there's a cock alert. Well, actually, it wasn't. It was just a message coming through on my phone, which I'd forgotten to turn off. But hey, never mind. I thought it was a cock
alert. Which band should have recorded an album called Cock Alert? Going back to the record, are you familiar with the record? Are you a fan of the record?
I am familiar with the record. I'm not a massive fan. Give me 2 minutes before we talk about the music on the album, because there's a story. I've always got a story, haven't I? When I was a very young cub journalist on Kerrang, it would be 82, something like that. I moved down to London for about 3 months. I did I suppose it's a glorified work experience in the Kerrang office at the time. And I was living in Belsize Park, which if anybody knows London, they'll know that now it's a very, very she posho area. At the time, it wasn't as posh as it is now, and clearly evidenced by the fact that I managed to get myself a couch in somebody's flat. It was a musician called John Osmond who knew a lot of the guys from Terraplane, Dave Bucket Colwell, Andy Barnett.
Terraplane went on to become Thunder, didn't they?
Correct.
Luke Morley and Danny Bowes, yeah.
Exactly. But it was all part of that crowd. Anyway, there was a pub on the hill on the way up to the centre of Belsize Park, which was called the Sir Richard Steele's. And it was one of those pubs where musicians used to just hang out all the time. I remember John Waite used to knock about there at one point. Turned out that Gary Barden was living up the road. And I met him in the Sir Richard Steele's and got talking to him and became kind of a little bit friendly for a while. And when he got the gig in MSG first time around, I was kind of in prime position because I already knew him. And so I managed to persuade him to give the first interview as the singer in MSG to me for Kerrang. And that was great. And I went up to his flat, which was also in Belsize Park, and then turned my cassette recorder on to do the interview. And of course, as you'll probably know, Gary Barden had a terrible stutter. You did know that?
Yeah, I knew that. And he also had incredibly tight trousers.
He had incredibly tight trousers, which might have had something to do with the stutter. But it was weird because obviously as a singer, he didn't stutter. There was no issue. He could go to the mic and he could sing perfectly. But as soon as you talked to him, the stutter became really bad. And the more nervous he was, the worse the stutter was. So as soon as the cassette tape went on, and it was probably his first interview as the new singer in MSG, it was just impossible. He was literally stuttering all over the place. I felt really, really, really sorry for him. What an awkward situation to be in. And then after about 5 minutes, I just went, listen, Gary, look, we'll just turn this cassette player off and I'll just remember what we talk about or make a few notes or whatever. And therefore, the interview got done and blah-de-blah. So that was kind of my story as to how I knew Gary Barden. And then when he got the heave-ho from Schenker's band, I guess I was a little bit biased towards him because he was a sort of a pal.
Do you know why he got fired from MSG? Because I don't think at the time I remember any news to why he was fired.
I seem to remember that Schenker had Peter Mensch managing him, who was obviously the big shot manager of AC/DC and Def Leppard and various other bands. And I seem to remember there was something about the fact that Barden just wasn't a big enough name. They wanted a name singer. I might be wrong on that, but that was the recollection that I have. And so that's why Bonnet came in. I guess that I might have had a little prejudice against Assault Attack, but I was never a massive Bonnet fan. He's got the range, we all know that, but it's very hard on the ear, I find. Do you like that kind of singing? I kind of found it was very grating, the way he sang.
I know what you mean. I can see what you're saying, but I think he was just on that cusp before it became grating. His range undeniable, and he did that really good record with Rainbow, Down to Earth, which was a great record. And obviously he'd done solo stuff as well. Night Games is a great song. He doesn't grate on me at all. I think he's a brilliant rock singer. The problem that Bonnet always had was that he didn't suit the mould. If you look at what he was wearing when he was in Rainbow, the white jacket, he was more like a character from Miami Vice than he was a singer of a rock band.
I think you've been kind saying that he looked like he was from Miami Vice, because I was just about to say he looked like a musical compere at a Butlins weekend.
Oh, I think you're being harsh there.
Well, I don't know. I'm going to stick by that. In your opinion, how has Assault Attack stood up over the years?
The first two MSG albums were very much in the mould of UFO. The song structures and the sound, that MSG lineup had Paul Raymond in it. It had that UFO heart, I guess.
Flavour.
Flavour's a good word. And I think the first two records felt like a natural extension of Schenker's time in UFO. I think he continued that sort of guitar sound. Whereas if you go into Assault Attack, it felt like a change in direction. It felt a bit punchier. It just felt a little bit harder than UFO. And I guess that's what I liked about it. And also, there's a couple of great tracks on there that are very bluesy, and it really showcased Schenker's blues guitar.
Which tracks?
Rocky to the Ground is
it sounds incredibly bluesy.
Oh, stop being facetious. You really are horrible. It had the usual Schenker instrumental on there. It had a couple of sort of radio-friendly hits like Dancer. There's a track called Desert Song, which has got an amazing groove to it. It is great, and I would recommend anybody who doesn't know that record, go back and rediscover it. It's a brilliant rock record.
Okay, I'm going to go back and have a listen. I do like the fact I'm just looking it up as you were telling me about what you liked about it. I have some respect for a rock album that has a song called Ulcer on it.
Is that the instrumental?
It's got to
I think that might be the instrument. Yeah, I think it is. I think that's the instrumental on it. I don't know who produced it.
Martin Birch.
We know who Martin Birch has produced over the years, so I would recommend it to anybody who doesn't know about it.
What I've been listening to today is an album called Black Leather Mojo, and I bet you know who that's by, don't you?
Not only do I know who it's by, but I designed the artwork for it, yes.
You didn't, did you? Really?
Yes.
Oh, that's
yes,
good. Okay.
And to be fair, and I'll put this out there, and he does know this, I still haven't been paid.
Ah, that's typical. Okay, so for people who don't know the album called Black Leather Mojo, this is brilliant because we don't ever tell each other what we've been listening to, so that's a good little segue. It's by a group called Silver Ginger 5. It was released in 2000, so God, 24 years ago. That makes me feel old.
Yep.
And for those who don't know, Silver Ginger 5 was a pickup band, really, from a guy who's known as Ginger, probably not known by our 3 American listeners, but certainly a big influence in the UK rock scene. Ginger, born in Newcastle, not too far from where you were born. Hey, Hunnsy.
Oh, he's born in South Shields, actually.
South Shields, okay. I stand corrected. And a childhood friend of yours, am I right in saying that?
A childhood friend and still very much an adult friend as well. In fact, I'm seeing him in, what day are we on now? I don't know what day we're on, but I'm seeing him in a few days' time because he's actually playing in my local town.
So I don't know why I decided I was going to listen to this today. It just kind of popped into my head. I was a big fan of Ginger's alma mater, the Wild Hearts. Most people will know of the band The Wild Hearts, but this was a little diversion. I think it was recorded in 1999, and it's kind of a weird record. Number one, it's produced by Tim Smith, who was in the Cardiacs, so that probably gives you some idea that it's going to be a little bit wild and a little bit eclectic. And it's a very odd sounding record. I don't know if you think that, Hunnsy, because it's very bombastic sounding. It's kind of like everything's turned up to 11.
That was Tim's way. Ginger, being a mate of mine, contacted me and said, I'm doing this record. I want you to do the artwork. So he sent me a demo of it for me to listen to. And then we went to a studio somewhere in Shepherd's Bush in London to photograph all the images for the album. And he turned up at this photo studio and he says, I've just got to go and get changed. And he came out he came out in this leather one-piece thing.
Yeah, that's the picture that's in the album sleeve, isn't it?
Yeah, and he'd done his hair and he had like his makeup on, but he was in this kind of like one-piece leather. It's almost like a spacesuit, really.
Yeah, I always thought it was rubber. I always thought it was like some kind of S&M bondage type thing.
It was. And he was like, I remember he was going, fucking hell, it's really hot in this. And I was going, well, understandably, and obviously we had the lights in the studio and stuff. And he was going like, fucking hell, how long is this going to take? And I was going, just a few more minutes. Anyway, we got the shots and he looked incredible. He looked really strange, different, all that sort of stuff. And musically, it was a different direction for him. I mean, there are elements that clearly aligned with his musical influences, but the sound of it, a lot of the record is very, as you described, bombastic and almost like reverb and lots of sort of like crashy sounds. And it's very trebly. And actually, the demo of the album, which I've still got, is not too different to the final version, really, if I'm being honest. And I don't know whether that put people off. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it probably did, because I remember when I first heard it, I was kind of taken back by the actual sound of it. Now, you had to be a big fan of Ginger, and I was a big fan of Ginger and his songwriting. You had to kind of battle your way through something that was a little bit difficult on the ear to get to the tunes. Of course, when you get to the tunes, there's some brilliant stuff on there. There was Sonic Shake, which is the opener, which I thought was a really great track. Girls Are Better Than Boys, very kind of pop.
That song always reminded me of Slade.
Yeah, I can see what you mean. I was thinking about what it reminded me of, and it reminded me of like Status Quo trying to play an ABBA song. Do you know what I mean?
Very good. Yeah, that's very good. It's a very good way of looking at it. Yeah, but it's a great record.
The songs are really great on it. I haven't heard it in many, many years. I don't know why it sprung to mind. It's probably because the Cosmic Universe was saying that you'd design the album sleeve, which I didn't even know. It's disappointing to me, though, Hunnsy, because obviously I'd like to go, oh, you designed that sleeve. It's absolutely shit. But I'm looking at it now and it's actually very good. I'm disappointed. I have to give you props.
Well, we needed a logo. And at the time, Ginger was very much into stars. He loved a star, right? He had a star tattoo and on his finger, on his hands and stuff.
And he liked the band Stars, I assume, too, didn't he?
He loved the band Stars. And in fact, I remember him saying to me, I want like a really chunky logo. I remember him actually saying to me, he says, I want a logo that people will be able to draw really easily on textbooks. And if they want to put it on their jacket, they can do that. So what I did was I created something that was really simple, chunky, big type, big star in the middle, if you're looking at it now. I went and actually got the logo made out of, I think he's still got it actually. I went and got it made at a ironmonger's type place. I went and sort of gave him the flat. Yeah, so it was an actual physical object, the logo, that we then stuck it on a base, chucked some dry ice and smoke around it and lit it and then photographed it like that. So it was an actual physical, it was in 3 parts, if I remember rightly. I think the Silver Ginger 5 and then it was kind of in one part and then the star was in another one, the 5 was not, but it was actually like a little model that we created.
Nobody would do that now, would they? It'd just be all Photoshop, wouldn't it? Nobody'd spend the time doing that, would they?
No, of course not. Of course not.
Too expensive apart from anything else.
Yeah. I saw them live as well. They played a couple of shows in London. I don't know whether they actually went around the rest of the country, but Connie Bloom.
I was just about to say, Connie Bloom from the Swedish band Electric Boys, yeah.
He was a good mate of Ginger's and he was in the band. And they played like their first show at the Astoria in London. Now, people who don't know the Astoria in London, it's not there anymore because it was taken down and replaced by some shishi clothes shop. But it was a great venue in the centre of London. And they played their first show there. It was a decent-sized show. It was solely made up of Wild Hearts fans. They wanted to see what Ginger was doing next because he disbanded the Wild Hearts for the 6th time. Yeah. And they wanted to come and see his new band. So it was packed. And in typical Ginger style, it wasn't just to sort of come out in a T-shirt and a pair of jeans. He came out wearing the full rubber outfit, right? And I've never seen so much pyro in my life. I mean, I've seen Kiss, but this was ridiculous. To continue the bombastic theme, he put that into the stage show as well, and it was super cool.
Had he not learnt his lesson from the photo session when he went, I couldn't wear this bondage gear for more than 5 minutes without expiring, and all of a sudden he decides to go on stage and add in a load of pyro?
There is footage online on YouTube of their gigs, so go and check it out. I think the Astoria gig is on there somewhere, so just go and check out the pyro, go and check out his outfit, and go and check the band out. Despite the fact they only made one record, it's a pretty good statement as a band. But a good choice, HoJo.
There you go. Disappointing again that we've agreed on something.
Yeah, people will stop tuning in if we keep agreeing.
What people?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Oh, yeah, you forgot about that.
Yeah.
Okay, so on to today's theme. You probably guessed from the intro that I made about loincloths and baby oil and homoeroticism.
Well, I'm very excited.
Of course you are. Who wouldn't be? So what band do you think I wanted to discuss today if those are the 3 key ingredients, Hunnsy?
There's only one band. You know my feelings toward this band. I think we're talking about the kings of metal, Manowar.
You're not wrong. I'm doing this as a favour to you because I know how much you love those guys. And you genuinely do love them, don't you?
Yes. I've loved them from the first moment I saw them. I still love them now. I don't sign up to the opinion that they're silly. What
do you think I sign up to?
Well, I think we're going to find out. I sign up to the fact that they carry the flag or the sword for true heavy metal. And I admire them for that. And they have stuck to it and they continue to carry the aforementioned flag and sword. And I think they're one of the last, if not the last bastion of true heavy metal. Okay,
so this leads to an interesting question because what I'd like to know is, why do you think they are the very definition of heavy metal? And the reason I ask that is that you couldn't argue that their music is the heaviest music out there, could you? I don't think anyone could reasonably argue that Manowar is the heaviest music out there. I could name you 10 bands off the top of my head whose music is heavier. So why do you think they are the quintessential heavy metal band?
Good question. There are several ways to answer this. I think their look is very distinctive. I think it's very...
Well, it's certainly distinctive.
It's very heavy metal. They sing about heavy metal. There are heavy metal bands that have got songs about heavy metal. The odd song, like Saxon and the Band's played on, which is a heavy metal song from a heavy metal band playing a heavy metal song at a heavy metal festival. That's quite heavy metal. We know Priest have got lots. But pretty much all of Manowar's songs are either very to the point about heavy metal, because they sing about what heavy metal is and what it makes you feel like to be a Manowar fan and to be a fan of heavy metal. Or they sing about invading and Vikings. There's nothing more heavy metal than marauding men with long hair and beards and loincloths waving swords at oncoming enemies. Current band Amon Amarth, again, I think they are apprentice to Manowar in terms of being very, very open with their feelings on the way that they write songs and what they sing about. For me, it's a mixture of the look, the subject matter that they sing about, and also the way they project themselves and talk about their band in interviews. We can talk about when you met them and had an interview with them, which still to this day makes me incredibly jealous that you have done this. So I'm going to hand it over to you, and you can tell our listener about your experience of Manowar, because mine was only purely music and seeing them live a couple of times.
You're a little bit wrong, because it wasn't even an interview. When this happened, I was summoned to meet Manowar. So just to say, just summoned. Yeah, it's metal. I got to agree.
Exactly. They didn't ask you; they summoned you.
They did. Anyway, this would be 84, maybe.
Hail to England type area.
Yeah, probably. Anyway, early 80s, when I was working on Kerrang magazine. Manowar were loved by one or two of the Kerrang writers, not really me. Dante Benuto was one of the big supporters of the band in the early days. I think he put them on the cover. So they had quite a lot of affection for Kerrang. And I think I must have done a live review or something. And, maybe it was a good review. I can't really remember. But for whatever reason, they decided that they liked me, I guess. And they wanted to recognise their gratitude for whatever I'd written about them in Kerrang. And the word came to the Kerrang office that myself, and I seem to remember it was another Kerrang writer, Malcolm Dome, God bless him, rest his soul.
Yeah.
We were summoned to a hotel in London's Bayswater area where the band was staying so that we could be inducted into what I was told was the Legion of Metal Brothers. I have to say, Hunnsy, that I wasn't really au fait with what the Legion of Metal Brothers was. And to be honest, to this day, I still don't really know. But I remember thinking at the time when we got the call that we were going to be inducted into the Legion of Metal Brothers, Malcolm and I, that this would be a good laugh. So we would both go down to their hotel to be inducted into, we didn't really know what. So Malcolm and I went there.
It wasn't a very salubrious hotel. It wasn't like the Sunset Boulevard. It wasn't like the
Sunset Marquee. No,
Marquee,
you definitely wouldn't take your girlfriend down there to propose to, would you? But we went there. It was, oh man, it's driving me nuts. It'll come to me and I'll shout it out in a minute. So we go to the hotel, Malcolm and I, and we're told to wait in the bar area. And if you remember bars in hotels in the 80s, they were just absolutely godforsaken places, weren't they? Malcolm and I were waiting in this terrible bar with awful carpet, sticky carpet where so much beer has been spilt on it and nobody could clean it up. And we waited and we didn't know what was going to happen. And I think there must have been a tour manager or someone who was organising this thing. And then all of a sudden, it was like, like in a Western where the saloon doors swing open like that. It opens, and there was Eric Adams and Joey DeMaio. The Columbia, that was it. It was the Columbia. So in the Columbia, the door opens and in walk Joey DeMaio and Eric Adams. They're not in what you call civvies, so it's not jeans and t-shirts. Oh no, it's the full loincloth and the baby oil routine.
What's wrong with that?
Well, there's nothing wrong with it, except there were probably a couple of old grandmas having half a stout in the corner and their false teeth must have flown out in sheer bewilderment.
But hang on, go back to your original question of why I love them.
Yeah.
And one of the answers I gave was because they are always metal. And even in that moment, they are still metal. They walk in dressed like that. That is living heavy metal right there.
Okay, well, I'm holding a thought that I'm going to come back to in a minute, but just to finish the story, they came in with some kind of, I don't know, it won't be a plastic sword. Not if they're metal, it would have been a real sword, wouldn't it? And they both got down on one knee and held this sword up in front of Malcolm and I and did some kind of what I would call cockamamie and what you would call heavy metal speech, and then inducted us into the Legion of Metal Brothers, which I was then told is a sacred group of supporters of the band who would forever be acknowledged on Manowar albums. Now,
Correct.
I haven't listened to a Manowar album or seen a Manowar album in many, many years. So only you'll be able to tell me if that's actually true. Because when their last album came out, got me crib sheet, The Lords of Steel in 2012. What's that all about? That's a long time without making any records.
Yeah, they just tour now.
2012. Okay, so the Lord of Steel was the last one. Was I credited on that as a member of the Legion of Metal Brothers?
I'll have to go and dig out my copy, which obviously I do have a physical copy of that record. I believe you are, because on their artwork, they still have that Legion of Metal Brothers section.
Brilliant.
So I imagine it's just a copy and paste for the person who's doing it.
Yeah, but you know when you get to our age, the old kneeling down on one knee is not easy anymore, is it? So if they're still inducting people into Legion of Metal Brothers, I hope they've had a knee replacement, because it's hard getting up off the floor, isn't it?
I remember when you originally told me that story, I was fuming with jealousy. How can someone who doesn't like the band be in the Legion of Metal Brothers?
To say I don't like them is a little bit wrong. I don't like their music. I like the fact that they exist because I find it very funny. And there's too much misery in the world, isn't there? So anything that's funny in life, that's a great thing. So I don't begrudge them their existence. I just begrudge them making records. That's slightly different.
Well, they haven't made one since 2012, so what are you complaining about?
Maybe all my prayers have paid off. So what I wanted to ask you, Hunnsy, the thought I was holding was when you said they came into the bar, baby oil to the max, loinclothed a go-go, and you went, that's very heavy metal. Well, when I look at that, I think that's very macho gay. There's a theme to be explored here. Where is the crossover between very, very macho gay behaviour and very, very heavy metal behaviour? Because I'm saying you can't even get cigarette paper between those two things. They're exactly the same, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it opens up the whole question around Rob Halford, his get-up, the leather and the little leather cap and all that sort of stuff. Again, could easily be thought of as very homoerotic and all that sort of stuff. I think it's probably for another time, but there are several examples of heavy metal bands, to your paper-thin cigarette layer, cigarette paper, between what is verging on heavy metal and what is verging on the more homoerotic type look and feel. Going back to Ginger in his full-on rubber gimp outfit, nicely knitted together.
Okay, but what I really want to ask you is, have you ever had those kind of feelings for Manowar?
Does the silence tell its own story?
The silence speaks volumes.
No, I just look at them as a brilliant heavy metal band carrying the standard and the sword for heavy metal.
And the oil?
Well, the oil is just...
The oil is just what?
Well, it's just part of the theatre, isn't it? It's part of the makeup to make them look like, anyway.
I get it.
Sorry.
I get it.
Yeah.
I've thrown you there, haven't I?
You have. You've thrown me. You've thrown me off the deep end. Never mind.
You know the answer to that is, though, not that there's anything wrong with it.
No, nothing wrong with it whatsoever.
No, there's anything wrong with it. So we've talked about Manowar, and the one question that springs to mind now that we've discussed your love of them, my love of them because they're ridiculous, is what is the most ridiculous item of clothing that you have ever worn thinking that it was metal? There's got to be some photos.
I can't say anything ridiculous. I don't think ridiculous is the word, but there's some stuff that I look back on and go, what were you thinking? It probably falls into that whole sort of category of the studded wristband and the studded belt. It's like, why was that a good idea at the time? What was I saying?
Yeah,
about
I mean,
myself?
I agree, but it's not absolutely out there ridiculous, is it?
No, you're going to tell me you've worn something ridiculous, though, aren't you?
I absolutely have, yeah.
Yeah, go on then. Is it as bad as the Scorpions logo on the back of your jacket?
I think it's probably worse in many ways.
Oh my God! Please do tell.
Okay, so when I was at university in Birmingham in 1982. Everybody knows Birmingham, home of heavy metal. It's kind of grim, it's industrial, it's grey skies, it's factories. It's not 19-year-old men walking up the suburban high street of King's Heath on a Thursday afternoon wearing the tightest pair of black spandex trousers you've ever seen in your life.
Tremendous.
I'd gone down to London. I'd gone to World's End. Do you remember the World's End was all the place where all the fancy gear was at, and the King's Road? And in a moment of madness, I bought these trousers. They were the kind of trousers that were so difficult to get on. They were so tight that you had to talcum powder your legs so that you could actually pull them up over. It was just ridiculous. If you go out on a Saturday night at 11 o'clock to a rock club, maybe you'll get away with it. Maybe. But no, 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Thursday when you're going to buy some vegetables and a bit of pork chops for your tea. Great idea. I'll get the spandex on.
Very good. Very good.
I am amazed that I walked up and down the high street. Nobody said anything. Nothing happened to me.
Were you hoping to bump into someone? Like maybe like a girl that you fancied?
I have no idea. What I do know, though, is that even as I was walking up the high street at the age of 19, I was incredibly self-conscious. And within about 50 yards, I'd gone, this is a really bad idea. So I brazened it out to go up and buy my tea. Came back home, took them off, never did that again. But oh my God, when you look back at it, the shame of it all.
What was the rest of the outfit? Did you coordinate it with anything, or was it just literally? Were you wearing like I don't know, like a shirt and spandex, or what were you wearing?
No, I think if you're wearing something like that, I think you're not going to try and draw attention away from it. You have to draw attention to it, don't you? So I think probably the rest of it was quite restrained. It was probably just a T-shirt, and it would have been funny, wouldn't it, if it was something like just a gabardine or a parka or something.
Yeah, would be brilliant.
Well, I've got to keep the cold out. Come on.
What I find remarkable about that story is you have the nerve to criticise Manowar for walking into that hotel bar, right? And yet you've just admitted that.
Yeah, but hold on. Hunnsy, I was 19 years old and I did it once. Now, these men are 70.
At the time, in 1984, they weren't 70.
I'll bet you in 1984 they weren't 19, though, were they?
Yeah, they wouldn't have been too far off. That's
Yeah, but I haven't persisted. I put that back into the dressing up box and went, that was a fucking stupid idea.
Yeah, but they're selling out arenas all over the Balkans at the minute. So and you're doing a podcast. So let's just see who made the right decision, shall we? Hey.
You've got me thinking now. Is it too late, though? Could we perhaps get into the loincloths and oil ourselves up and suddenly have this podcast go global?
Well, listen, if this podcast ever gets successful, because there's the theme now where really successful podcasts sort of, they take it on the road and they do like live recordings in front of an audience.
Yes.
I will go on record now that if this becomes successful and we get enough fans and it becomes the next big thing and we decide one day to do a live recording of this podcast, I will walk on in a long cloth, oiled up, and you can do the same, and you can indoctrinate me to the HoJo and Hunnsy's Legion of Metal Brothers, okay?
I'm going to induct you. I'm not going to indoctrinate you.
Oh, yeah.
I'll induct you. I think that's a fair deal. If we ever get to the point where we can actually do a live show based on HoJo and Hunnsy's Hard Rock House, I am prepared to put on a loincloth, cover myself in baby oil, and do the entire show like that. Are you in?
Yeah, as long as I can be Eric Adams and you be Joey DeMaio.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll be Joey, you can be Eric. Okay. Hunnsy, we've waffled on for a long time, but before we go, at the end of episode 5, I've got some hot news for you.
Really?
Remember right at the start of this ludicrous adventure when we laughed about the fact that Lääz Rockit had been so offended by a negative review that I wrote of one of their albums in Kerrang that they all had T-shirts made that said, Howard Johnson sucks dick. Remember that? Well, the hot news, hot off the presses, this just in, is Michael Coons, the vocalist with Lääz Rockit, has been located and has agreed to an interview. So you and I are going to be chatting with Michael Coons about 80s metal, how they felt about the fact that I slaughtered their album, about why they decided they were going to make a T-shirt with that and all wear it on stage. I think we're going to have some serious fun when we do that. So that's coming up very soon. I'm going to let you know, Hunnsy, when we're going to Zoom with Michael all the way from the sunshine in LA. And if people don't want to tune back in for that, then I think there's no hope for them.
What a first guest to have on our podcast. And it's related to one of the funniest stories ever. I can't wait to find out what drove him and who came up with the idea to go, let's make T-shirts when we go on stage that says Howard Johnson sucks.
Hunnsy, it's been a pleasure, never a chore. Love chatting with you, mate. And we'll be seeing you very soon.
Yeah, look forward to it. See you later. Ciao. Bye.
See you, buddy. Bye.